Good evening, everyone. It's the portion of Vayishlach. We're going to go our journey through the details of the summary of the portion that we read the Shabbos. And then, as we do, or every week, we'll take a few of the items and try and find the messages that we can take home. What does this week talk about? Yaakov is on his way home to his father Yitzchak after 20 years of absence. Yaakov sent ahead messengers to Esav, his brother, with a reconciliatory message. Remember, Yaakov went out of town because he was worried, and his mother was worried that Esav would want to kill him, having taken away the blessings. So now, meeting Esav for the first time, there is great concern as to what Esav's intentions are. So Yaakov is certainly conciliatory. The messengers that he sent out come back and they report that Esav is approaching with 400 troops. So clearly there's a military encounter about to happen. There's great concern on Yaakov's part. He strategically divides the family into two camps, so that if God forbid one would come to harm, maybe the other would be able to escape. He then prayed to Hashem and he called on God's promise that he would protect Yaakov. Yaakov sends gifts to Esav, consisting of 100 head of cattle and sheep, one herd at a time. So he's giving all these gifts to try and make Esav feel less, in case he's harboring any intentions to do him harm, that it would be a conciliatory encounter. That night Yaakov crosses the Yabok River together with his family. He then goes back for a few of the vessels and he's alone there. And when he's alone, he encounters a Ish, which is interpreted as an angel, which is interpreted as the archangel of Esau. So the commentaries explain that it was some kind of spiritual force that he encountered through that night, and we're going to deal with that. He wrestles with Yaakov all the way until dawn. He wrestles to the extent that Yaakov is now limping because he has a dislodged sciatic nerve and a problem with his hip, and it makes him now have to limp. Yaakov refused the angel's request to let him go. The angel had said, it's time in the morning, I have to go back, let me go. And Yaakov says, I refuse to let you go until you bless me. The angel then blesses Yaakov and informs him that his name would from now on be called Israel, Yisrael. We still use the name Yaakov, but he now has the special name Yisrael. We're instructed not to eat that part of an animal, even a kosher animal, where the sciatic nerve is present, because of this whole episode that took place this week. So it's called the hindquarters of an animal. We don't eat it. In South Africa, we sell it as treif. In some places where meat is much more scarce, they would extract this nerve out of the hindquarters and thereby allow the use of even though that part of the animal as kosher meat. Esav runs towards Yaakov and he embraces him and they both weep. Esav returns to his home in Seir and Yaakov proceeds to the city of Sukkot. Yaakov purchases a plot of land in Shechem and erects an altar to Hashem. So now we have the third place in Israel that we actually have a record in the book of Genesis that was bought by our forefathers. We've had the place of Hebron, which is where the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave in which Avram and Sarah and Adam and Eve and many of our forefathers were laid to rest, the place of Hebron. We now have the place of Shechem that was purchased and bought. And we also have in Tanakh, in the case of Dovid HaMelech, where he clearly buys the city of Yerushalayim. There's actually a record of the purchase of our forefathers of that land, and notwithstanding that there is so much contested about who it actually belongs to. We know who it belongs to. Shechem, who is the crown prince of that city, violates Dinah and keeps her as a hostage. Shem is infatuated with Dinah and he wants to marry her. Yaakov's two sons, Shimon and Levi, slyly agreed that they would give their sister to him in marriage, provided that him and all the other men of the city of Shechem would circumcise themselves. The Shechemites agreed to this mass circumcision. Shimon and Levi then enter into the vulnerable city. Everyone's recuperating from this serious operation. They killed all the male inhabitants and they liberated their sister Dinah. Yaakov was not happy with this act. He saw it as an extreme act of violence. He was not happy with it. We'll come back to deal with this detail as well. Yaakov then goes to Beit El. He arrives there and Hashem blesses him. And now that he has his name changed to Israel, not only by the arch enemy, the angel of Esau, but Hashem. And finally, en route to Hebron, Rachel, the mother, the wife of Yaakov, and the mother of Joseph, Yosef, and Binyamin, passes away on the roadside as she's giving birth to her second son, Benjamin. Yaakov buries her on the roadside, leading to Beit Lechem. That's where the Kever Rachel, the tomb of Rachel, is till today, visited in the city of Beit Lechem. And now, unfortunately, it's surrounded by all kinds of fortification because Jews weren't able to go and pray there. Right now, there's a yeshiva there, there's learning, there's praying going on the whole day. We'll come back to visit this strange alternate place for burial that was reserved for the mother Rachel. Yaakov's eldest son Reuben interferes with his father's marital life. It's a little interlude of Yaakov not being happy with Reuben, and that's just in brackets, a short episode, and Yaakov then arrives in Hebron. Yitzchak passes away. This is the second of our forefathers, and he was buried as well in the cave of Machpelah alongside his wife, at least one of his wives, Leah, and his parents. The Torah lists the wives and descendants of Esau, and that is the portion of Vayishlach. Let's try and get through some of the life messages that we can take from this very special reading. The opening verse says that Yaakov sends a message to his brother Esau, and the message is, Im Lavan garti va'echar ad ata. I have resided, I have lived temporarily. Garti means to sojourn with Lavan, and I've been delayed until now. This is where I've been until now, he's telling Esau. Why is that so relevant to Esau to know that he's been at Lavan all these last decades? So the Rashi and the Midrash explains that I stayed true to my core values even while I was residing at Lavan. Don't think that after all these years, you're dealing with a man who's less involved because he's been in such a distant, difficult environment, not a holy environment, not an environment conducive to Torah and mitzvahs. And I've been there for decades. You might think that somehow my priorities in life have been diluted, and I'm no longer so committed to the heritage and to the mitzvahs of our Torah. So just know, Im Lavan garti, I sojourned, the word garti is sojourned, and the Midrash says, V'taryag mitzvah shamarti. The same word garti, to sojourn, if you switch around the letters, spells the Hebrew number Taf, Reish, Yud, and a Gimel. And Taryag is the 613. What is special about the number 613? It is the number of mitzvot, of commandments we have in the Torah. So he was sending a message to Esau. Im Lavan garti. I have sojourned with Lavan, but garti has the letters Taryag. Know that I am absolutely committed to the 613 commandments of the Torah. I am not in any way diminished in my adherence and commitment to our Torah, notwithstanding that I've been in these foreign pastures of Lavan for so many years. And in fact, he's giving a very strong message to Esau. This is my identity. Know who I am. I know who I am. I want you to know what my priorities are. And as the commentaries explain, the word garti, which is to sojourn, it doesn't really mean to live and become a permanent resident. Sojourn implies a stranger. And it is also hinted at in this word that Yaakov is telling his brother Esau, I never made it my permanent home. I never got absorbed into the environment of Lavan so that now became my home. I always knew, and my family always knew, that I was a sojourner, a stranger. I was there, but I certainly was not a citizen of the place of Haran, of where Lavan lived. So because Yaakov retained his knowledge and recognition that his home was Israel, and there he was just as a sojourner, that is why he never allowed himself to feel so comfortable there that he could now embrace the lifestyle and the priorities of Lavan, his very, very bad influencing brother-in-law Lavan. On the contrary, I kept all the Taryag mitzvot. All of that is wrapped up in just 2 or 3 of the words of the first verse. When you translate it into English, I've recited with Lavan, you lose all of this. But in the original language, the letters mean so much more than the obvious translation. Yaakov wants him to know that I've been involved in Galut, in exile, but I know who I am, and I want you to know who I am. These are my priorities, this is what I stand for. And then it says that Yaakov was greatly afraid and he was distressed. The Midrash says that, what was he afraid of? He was afraid that he might be killed, and he was distressed that he might have to kill. So in actual fact, he had a double jeopardy over here. Yaakov was saying, I don't want to fight. I'm not a warmonger. I don't want to be in a battle. I don't want to get hurt by your negative intentions if you're coming at me in war. And I also don't want to win the battle in a way that I cause you to be maimed or injured or death to be brought on your people. So Yaakov had this very, very spiritual stance of not wanting to be harmed, but not wanting to harm anyone either. It wasn't like, I can't wait to destroy my enemy. He didn't want to destroy. He didn't want to be in this battle in the first place. That's what distressed him. And he says, I'm going to divide my family into 2 camps, so that if Esau comes to the one camp and smites it, God forbid, then the camp which is left shall escape. So it was a strategic move to ensure that even if, God forbid, harm would come to one of the camps, then the other would be able to survive. Rashi says that he prepared himself in 3 ways. If you look at the verse, we actually see a very conscious, deliberate preparation in 3 very diverse and different ways for this encounter with his brother Esav, whom he doesn't know if he wants to come and kill him or if he has negative intentions or not. The first thing he does is he sends gifts. There's a conciliatory approach. There is sacrificing on behalf of peace. I'm ready to give. I'm ready to give away. And he sends these gifts to try and reach to the heart of Esav so that there is not going to be a conflict. Simultaneously, a separate act that he does is that he prays. As we read in the verses, he turns to God and he says, Hatzilenina, Hashem, please save me. Save me from harm and save me from causing harm. And the third, you know that he divided the camp into 2 and he placed the one there, the one there. These were all strategic methods of going into war. He was ready to fight. He didn't just prepare with one of these 3, he prepared all of these 3. He knew that fighting without praying or praying without being ready to take up arms, without doing every effort to avoid the conflict by doing all the peace treaties that he could possibly do, he did all of the above. He wasn't caught up in one way without the other. All of the above were part of his approach to dealing with the impending danger. I quote a midrash that's actually mentioned that Tzedakah Asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, Hashem did a kindness to the Jewish people, Shepizron Bein HaUmas, that Hashem scattered us into exile. So exile is not a good place. We don't want to be in exile. But what was the kindness that Hashem did, that he scattered us throughout the exile? Because as Yaakov said over here, if the Jewish people will be in one place, and God forbid there will be an enemy that comes to try and destroy the Jewish people, there would be no remnant, God forbid. We had twice a situation where we were completely enveloped by the enemy who wanted to destroy us. Once in Egypt, where every single Jew was at the mercy of the evil Paro. And in the story of Purim, every single Jew was part of the 127 states that were ruled by Achashverosh, and Haman had got his permission to destroy the Jewish people. There was no Jew outside of that. That's why particularly those 2 situations were so ominous. But if you look through the annals of our history, the Jewish people were always in a multitude of places. If they were expelled from Spain, they moved to Turkey and then to Russia. And if they were unfortunately destroyed in the Holocaust in Europe, there were Jews elsewhere that were beyond the reach of Hitler. So the Torah says that actually Hashem does us a kindness, that He scattered us, that we've been able to endure any evil force that wanted to destroy us. There was always some Jew somewhere else that would survive. This strategy of Yaakov, I'll divide my family so that if the one comes to harm, at least the other doesn't. I want to talk about the concessions to Esau, because somebody once asked the question, why don't we learn from Yaakov? Look, he sends, we'll soon see, it was quite a formidable gift that he sends to Esau to try and be conciliatory and turn around what might be a conflict into peace. So look how much Yaakov is ready to sacrifice to Esau. He's ready to give away so much in order to get peace. So isn't that then a precedent for us? Shouldn't we always follow this as well? We should be ready to sacrifice and give up of ourselves. We should be ready to compromise so that we have peace. And compromise what? Maybe we should be ready to compromise our religious values so that we have peace with our neighbors. Maybe we should compromise any of the absolute allegiances that we have in order to have peace. Look, Yaakov sacrificed for peace. Why don't we also sacrifice for peace? And obviously the answer is, look what Yaakov was ready to sacrifice. He sacrificed wealth. He sacrificed possessions. He was ready to give away what he had worked so hard to achieve. That wasn't what defined him. I'm ready to be poorer if I emerge with peace. Yaakov did not send a message to Esau that I'm keeping some of the mitzvahs. I've given up some of them and maybe now you'll like me better. No, look at what he was ready to concede in. He was ready to concede in physical assets and wealth. Definitely not the definition of identity and who he was as a Jew and how firmly he believed that that allegiance would not be undermined. So don't learn, as somebody once asked me, if Yaakov could make concessions to his brother Esau, maybe we should all make concessions with the Yetzer Hara, with the negative elements in our lives. And the answer is the concessions we make can relate to our possessions, which are ultimately not defining of who we are. But what does define us? Not even an inch. Then we have a beautiful verse where Yaakov turns to Hashem and he says in his prayer, asking Hashem to look after him, Katonti mikol hachasadim, mikol haemet asher asita imavtecha. I am totally unworthy of all the mercies, of all the truth which you have shown on your servant. The Alter Rebbe, Reb Shnei Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, explains that the meaning of this is that every kindness bestowed on us by Hashem should cause us to be exceedingly humble. This is the manner of Yaakov. It should not bring one to arrogance and to self-satisfaction. It should bring us to humility. Because we can respond to the gifts of Hashem in different ways. Hashem blesses us. We become exceptionally wealthy. We're now a millionaire and everyone is carrying favor with us. And we have an opinion that everyone is ready to embrace because we're so powerful and so important, because we have political gravitas. How do we respond to the gifts of Hashem? If it causes us to become arrogant, look at me, look how powerful I am. I don't need to come onto anybody. I don't have to be accepting of anybody else because I can manage everything on my own. If it brings to arrogance, we've lost the point completely. Yaakov was blessed with such wealth that happens in last week's portion. What did it result in his attitude, in his persona? Katonti mikol hachasadim. I feel unworthy. I feel humbled by the gifts you have given me. Why do I deserve to have so much good, Hashem? I don't really deserve to have. I once had a member of our community who asked the question, why me? He had unfortunately been involved in an accident and he was recuperating in hospital. And he said, why me? And the obvious response was, well, sometimes we don't know why bad things happen to us, and that bad is not necessarily bad, and there could be a purpose and a reason. I don't know one tries to explain to a person who is in great pain and asking the question, why me? And the congregant interrupted and said, no, that's not my question. I'm not saying, why me? Why did I have to go through this pain and suffering? What I'm asking is, why me? Why did Hashem save me? Look what I went through. I could have perished in a moment, and Hashem has held on to me. Why me did Hashem save me and allow me to live another day? What do I need to do to respond to the kindness of Hashem? So the why me can be expressed in different ways in our lives. And if we think that we're entitled and we deserve and everything that's coming our way, we richly deserve because of all my brilliance and all of my importance, we become arrogant by the gifts of Hashem. Yaakov says, we should stand in front of Hashem and say, why me, Hashem? Why have you chosen me to have all of these wonderful things? How come you gave me such a beautiful mind and an ability to study and a beautiful family? Why me? What do I need to think of in my life to respond to your beautiful gifts that you've given me in my life? And that makes my person a much happier person. Much happier person when we're asking why me in terms of why do I deserve to have so much good. I'm humbled. That's the response. And our response should be to all the wonderful things that happen in life is not to make us more arrogant as it often does, but to make us more humble. Now comes the story of this battle, this fight through the night, which we said we're going to talk about, and there are so many questions to ask about this. It says in the verse that Yaakov remains alone, Vayavek ish imo, and a man wrestled with him the whole night, all the way until dawn. Then what happens is, Yaakov, the angel says, Shalchenina. Yaakov is now overpowering this enemy, and the enemy, this man, we'll soon try and understand who this man is. This man says, Shalchenina, send me away. I have to go on my way. I've got to get back. I've got an 8 o'clock appointment in the heavens above. I've got to get back there. Let me go. Yaakov now turns to the person whom he's had a fight with the whole night and says, no, not so fast. I'm savoring. I'm holding on to my encounter with you. I'm not going to let you go so fast. I want you to give me a blessing. Can you imagine a Jew walking down the street, God forbid, having a mugger hold him up in a dark alley? They fight the whole night. Finally, he's able to prevail, and he's now not overcome by the enemy that wants to rob him. And now the robber is saying, just let me go, let me go. And the poor Jew who's now been through this whole ordeal, fighting through the night, says, no, I'm not going to let you go, not so fast. I want you to give me a bracha. Give me a blessing. We need a blessing from a robber, from an enemy, from somebody who's coming to fight with us. That's what we need at the end of the whole fight. Yaakov is now injured, he's limping, he's been through all of the devastating effects of this encounter, and he's saying, no, I'm not going to let you go, I want a blessing from you. What does Yaakov need a blessing from this man? And as the commentaries need to explain, this man cannot simply be a man. Why? I mean, let's look at the verse again. Jacob remained alone. A man wrestled with him. What's the obvious question in this verse? How could there be a man to wrestle with him if Jacob is alone? The verse just said, nobody was there. Jacob was alone, and a man wrestled with him. How could there be a man if he was alone? The Torah just bore witness that Jacob remained alone. How could there be a man wrestling with him? So this man, and for many other reasons, is not obviously a man. This was not just a judo fight that happened on a street corner. This was an encounter that Yaakov was going to have with Esav. He doesn't know whether it's going to be a war, whether it's going to be a conciliatory meeting. And just prior to this, there is a battle that takes place. And the commentaries explain this man was actually, because later on, when at the end of the whole encounter, Yaakov is given a blessing, and we'll soon see what the blessing is. And then he turns around, and the blessing is explained as Ki saritem elikim v'adam v'tuchal. You've overcome this kind of godly power. There suddenly it doesn't describe it as a man, it speaks about a godly force. So this man obviously means more than a man. It was, in fact, the angel that had come to wrestle with Yaakov, with his faith, with his internal turmoil and a struggle to work himself out before the battle that he is going to have with Esau. So this is an angel. Then the commentaries explain it's not just any angel, it's the angel that is the spiritual force of Esau. It is Esau's archangel. Before he meets Esau in the flesh, he's encountering Esau and the spiritual elements of Esau that he's got to encounter. In fact, we're probably talking about a battle that happens to Yaakov, who had remained alone. There was nobody else there, which was an internal battle between the forces in this world that represent Esau, negativity, physical acquisitions, and the purpose that is totally rooted in the physical element, as opposed to Yaakov, whose ideal is a spiritual. So he's about to have this showdown encounter between Yaakov representing a world of Torah, Esau representing a world of violence. And before the encounter, there's an encounter. You know, every time we go out to do battle, whatever the battle is, we're going to find a job. We're going to have to overcome a difficulty at work. Whatever that battle is, before that battle, there's a battle. And if we win the pre-battle, which is this battle with the spiritual elements, who am I? What can I? Do I believe in myself? Do I believe I have the capacity? Do I have allegiance? Do I know where I stand? Do I know who I am? If we win that battle and we come out strong, then we can face up with Esau too. But before we meet the physical Esau, we need to resolve the inner conflicts that happen. And so it lends itself to say that Jacob was alone. There was no other being. It was a force. It was a spiritual force. It was a force that was representing the world of Esau. And we all have that force inside of ourselves. We're told that we have a Yetzer Tov, a godly soul that wants only good. And then we have an animal soul that is looking for Esau's world. Violence, hate, jealousy, anger, wanting only the things that make me happy physically with abandon for anything, meaning and values and purpose. So before we go out to fight the battle and go for the job interview and deal with the difficulty at work, we have to resolve the inner conflict. And the inner conflict is this war of who am I? What do I stand for? What is my name? What is my identity? And if we can come out strong, as Yaakov does, then although he is wounded, Yaakov looks at this battle through the night. The night is indicative. The night represents darkness. It represents lack of clarity. It represents our inability to see as we can when the day breaks. As soon as the day breaks, this angel, this force, this energy says to him, Shalcheni na, send me away. The dawn has broken. There's light. Yaakov is not caught up in the battle any longer. Now suddenly day, the clarity, the knowledge of who I am, the knowledge of purpose, of what my goal is in life, the clarity that has emerged from this inner battle, suddenly drives away the negativity and one's in a positive place. And this force says, send me away. Yaakov said, no, I'm not going to just send you away. I've been through a battle. I want to show myself and the world and my children and you and me that if we go through a battle and we go through a challenge, we don't just survive. The objective of enduring a battle in life, and we come out injured even, the ramifications, it's not just about survival. We need to say to ourselves, what did I gain as a result of this battle? How am I more developed? How have I grown? What have I learned from this encounter? How do I now have a greater wealth and strength that I can utilize to face the world as a result of this battle? This battle was not meant to simply allow me to survive. We don't go through, God forbid, a situation of COVID and then emerge from it, hopefully, thankfully, and say, we're now exactly as we were before. If we've been through a dark period in our lives, what have I learned from it? How have I grown? How are my attitudes more mature, more responsible, more accountable as a result of this terrible challenge that I've been through? Yaakov asking the angel of Esav for bracha is telling us that if we go through a predicament that is painful and difficult, rather than being a victim, rather than saying I'm overwhelmed by the battle, what's left of me as a result? Look, I'm limping. I'm now in a terrible situation. Yaakov says, I want blessing to come out of this. I want growth to come out of this. I want my life to be more enhanced as a result of having endured this battle. This battle is going to forge strength in me that I never would have had I not been through this battle. Finding the blessings in the encounters that are painful is one of the richest growth areas in our life. To look at the predicament, the darkness, the night, the battle, the confusion, the difficulty, the lack of clarity, to emerge from that and being a stronger human being as a result, makes every encounter and situation in life a contributing factor to growth. It's an attitude, it's a mindset that's saying to ourselves that I can utilize the black, dark patches of my life to grow and to develop and to be blessed to a greater degree than I was before. This is such a powerful scene, this battle before the battle. So when he saw that he could not prevail against him, the angel, this force, this being, he touched the hollow of his thigh. So Nachmanides says, Yaakov's struggle with Esav's angel represents the physical suffering of galut, of exile. We're struggling with Esav's angel all the time. It is the voices in our heads that are saying, why do we have to, and is it necessary, and can't we just give up, and we're not going to be able to endure this, and I don't believe in myself, and I don't believe in anything. All of those voices are the voices of this battle that we're all going through. And Nachmanides says we suffered all this and we persevered, as alluded to the verse immediately after this, by Yavo Yaakov Shalem, and Jacob comes to Shalem. But as the commentaries explain, Shalem means whole, complete. Yaakov actually arrives out of this encounter with a wholesomeness, with growth, with development in himself, a more complete human being as a result of this. And our struggles throughout the exile are meant to result in a growth in us where we become a more wholesome human being as a result of it. Why did he strike him in the thigh? Why, if the injury was caused, that it relates specifically to the thigh? So Hasidus explains that our feet are what separate the higher realm of our lives from the earth. Our minds are carried higher, our hearts, as we've discussed before, there's a hierarchy of limbs, our minds, and then our hearts, and then our functional limbs down below. Our feet keep us upright, keep us standing in a posture that recognizes there's a hierarchy of limbs. The mind is at the peak, the top, the pinnacle point of our lives. That is what guides our hearts, and our love results in all of the actions that we do. To bring us down means to bring us down to the earth. Don't stand on the stability of your 2 feet that hold you higher, that make you feel elevated from the ground. I'm going to bring you down. So specifically the attack of this negative voice is at the thigh that is the leg that holds us above the world rather than us becoming completely involved. The angel then says, let me go, the day breaks, the night is over, the darkness is over, there's now clarity, the sun is rising. And Yaakov says, no, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. And the angel turns around to Yaakov and he says, well, firstly, the first half, as in the Talmud Chulin, the angel says, I'm an angel, and from the day that I was created, my time to sing praises to Hashem has not come until now. Even this negative force was put here into the world by Hashem. It has a mission to perform on part of Hashem. So the Talmud says the angel was saying, I've got to get back. I've got a duty. I had my duty to perform here below, but I have duties to apply in the higher realm as well. Please let me go. And then the transformation that the angel says to Yaakov, you will not be called Yaakov, but from now on you're going to be called Yisrael. Yaakov means the heel holder, because he was named Yaakov because he was holding on to the akev, the heel of Esav. That is how he was born, grasping the heel of Esav. Seemingly subservient, seemingly an afterthought, seemingly less important to this powerful being Esav. That is how Jacob came into the world. And his encounter with Esav, he becomes known no longer as Yaakov, but Yisrael. Yisrael means ki sarita im Elokim adam v'tuchal. You fought with angelical angels, with spiritual, holy, godly forces, and you prevailed. Yisrael means a prince. It means a prevailer, a person who overwhelms the enemy is the name Yisrael. In fact, it connotes the opposite of Yaakov. Yaakov is the heel holder of the heel of Esav, and Yisrael represents Israel at its greatest height. Yaakov transforms himself by encountering the angel of Esav, from a heel holder, from an afterthought, from supposedly a less than, into being the master of the environment, the master of the situation, the purpose and the goal being realized through him. He became a prince. He became something so uplifted as a result of this negative encounter. As we said before, the objective of getting a blessing out of this encounter is indicative to us of having to always find what is the blessing, what is the gain, what is the growth. How am I now Yisrael more than I ever was before as a result of having to have gone through this encounter? In actual fact, the name Yaakov is used in the Torah afterwards, and generally when we're describing the Jewish people in a lower situation, a difficult situation, then we are associated with the name Yaakov. But when we are associated with following Hashem and fulfilling our mission and being uplifted, we are called Yisrael. We have two different names and two different predicaments and two different situations and two different lifestyles or choices that we often make. We should aim for the Yisrael. Now, Esav comes running towards him. Remember, he had 400 troops. He had soldiers surrounding him, and he runs towards him, and he embraces Yaakov. Yaakov doesn't know what's coming. And he fell on his neck, and he kissed him. In the Torah, Vayishlach, which is the Hebrew word, Vayishlach, and he kissed him, has a whole lot of dots on top of the word. In the Torah, there are no dots. They're letters, they're words, in black parchment, in black ink on the parchment. In this case, this one word has a whole lot of dots on top of the words of this word, which implies that there is some need to interpret this word. It wasn't a simple kiss. The Talmud tells us, the Midrash tells us, that what was the Vayishlach when he kissed him, it implies that this was an exception to the rule. It wasn't a regular kiss. Said Rabbi Yanai, it's to tell us that they did not intend to kiss Yaakov at all. Yeah, in fact, intended to bite him. He came to do him harm. But Yaakov's throat turned into marble and broke the evil one's teeth. The enemy that had come actually to destroy had his destructive intent turned into a kiss, into an embrace, into a drawing closer. Not because that's what he intended, but Yaakov, standing so firm and standing so strong, was able to blunt the teeth and the instrument that wanted to cause him harm by encountering and overcoming Esav. First his angel, and now with Esav, Esav didn't intend the kiss. That's what came out. Then it says they separated their ways, and he went to Seir, he went to his destination, and Yaakov came to a place, and he built for him a house, and he made sheds. Sheds is the translation of the Hebrew word Sukkot. Now everyone knows what that is from the festival of Sukkot. When we sit in very temporary sheds and shacks and homes, our sukkah. So it says that he built for himself a house, and for his cattle, he made sheds. So the Rebbe explains, for himself, for his true self, for his true priorities, his family, his life, his children, he constructed a house. For the cattle, his material possessions and other peripheral elements of life, he sufficed with a minimal shed. So the Rebbe says this verse is very indicative about what do we build houses for and what do we build sheds for. Well, you'll say most people have their animals sleep in their kennel or sleep in a shed outside. But in a much more deep understanding of priorities in life, sometimes what we build in our lives and prioritize are things that are of inconsequential value. The cattle, whatever that means today, so we're not all farmers, so we're bankers. So the cattle is money, it's finance, it's possessions. Sometimes our possessions become the most important things in our life, and we work in order to ensure that the possessions are going to have their place. We build permanent structures for the possession elements, for the physical elements of our lives, and for our holy objectives. For our spiritual growth, we build a little shed. That's not a priority. So Yaakov is giving us the true model. Make sure that you build homes for your family and build sheds for your cattle. Make sure that you remember what is the important, what is the priority, and what is less than vitally important. Don't get your priorities confused. There was once a chassid of Reb Shalom Dovid, Reb Rashab, who was completely occupied in his new, flourishing footwear business. And his life was talking about how he's going to make this footwear business grow and it's going to develop and he's going to be exporting shoes and he's going to be importing shoes and he's going to be selling shoes and shoes. And the Rebbe said to him, I've seen people put their feet into galoshes. Galoshes are what? Are the rubber boots that they used to wear when they went into the snow. I've seen people put their feet into their boots. But to put one's head into a boot? In other words, he was saying to his chassid, he was saying to his disciple, so you've got work to do. So you have to run your business. So you have to be involved. Of course, you have to be involved to make it succeed. But don't let that come to be the place where you put your entirety, your whole mind, your whole head, everything about your life is your business, is about your financial standing. That becomes total preoccupation. And your family, you don't have time for. Your kids, you don't have time to put them to sleep because you're busy making more money. And the kids don't get your time. So he says, I see that you have a very successful shoe business, but I think I've seen people put their feet into their shoes, but the head, for somebody to walk around with a head in a shoe, a boot over his head as a hat, that's where your head is. He was obviously saying to the chassid, make sure that your head is in the right place. Let's see if we can find one more message that we can do before the end. It says that he came to Shalem, the place of Shalem. We've already said from the Talmud, he came to a place Shalem. He was healed. Shalem begufo, his body was healed. He's healed from his limb. Shalem b'mamono, he was whole in his wealth. But he sustained no loss as a result of the gifts that he dispatched to Esau. He wasn't diminished, even physically. Whole in his Torah learning, because he forgot nothing of his Torah whilst he spent all those years in the house of Laban. He came Shalem, he came wholesome. We often speak about the difference between Shalom, which means peace, and Shalem, which means whole. Peace implies that there are two parts. There's an enemy, there's something that you have to find a common ground between opposites. Shalem means it's all whole, it's all complete. And the objective is, in our lives, to be whole in body and whole in wealth and whole in our understanding of Torah and whole in our values. Whole, on every front, whole. Shalem. I think we've reached the critical hour, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to say thank you to everybody for being part of the shiur. Thanks for joining. Have a beautiful Shabbos. Make sure that if there's any encounter that you have to do with negativity, it results in some kind of newfound blessing in your life. Thanks for being here. God bless.